Hey!
Hi! Welcome to CO's first mock election.
On November 6th, we'll be hosting our first ever mock election right here in the quad.
At both lunches.
So come on down.
Practice your civic engagement duties.
Don't let other people represent you, represent yourself.
So what's gonna be on the ballot?
Oh, good question.
U.S. senators,
Propositions
Governor?
and governors. So hope to see you there.
See you out there.
November 6th.
Prop 1, it authorizes $4 billion in general obligation bonds for existing affordable housing programs for low-income residents, veterans, and farm workers. The fiscal impact is that it increased state costs to repay bonds averaging $170 million annually over the next 35 years. Some arguments, the pros for this, it helps our severe housing crisis, it makes affordable housing, and it does not raise our taxes. Cons, the state can't afford to borrow more money to pay bonds that could not eventually get paid off. And some people want the private market to add more supply to. Some supporters for this are the Habitat for Humanity organization and California Democratic Party. Now I'll be talking about Prop 3. This authorizes $8.9 billion in state bonds to fund projects for water supply and quality, watersheds, fish and wildlife projects, water conveyance, and groundwater sustainability and storage. The fiscal impact of this is increased state costs to repay the bonds, averaging $430 million per year over the next 40 years. The pros for this, it creates reliable, safe drinking water, it has dam repairs, and improved water quality. Cons, it gives money to organizations, interest payments will double of what we owe, and past water bonds have not always worked. Some supporters are the Community Water Center, Agricultural Council for California, and some opponents are the Sierra Club of California, the League of Women Voters of California, and the Southern Watershed Alliance. And neither party has a stand for this.
Proposition 6 eliminates certain road and transportation funding, and it requires certain fuel taxes and vehicle fees to be approved by the electorate. 2017, our government decided to implement a new gas tax to raise funding to repair roads around California, to maintain them, and to repair them. So the supporters of Prop 6 think that California has already been taxed enough, and in order to repair our roads, we should just work with what we're given. Seeing as we're taxed in a bunch of other different areas, we don't need to have a fuel tax or vehicle fees. Opponents say that the gas tax hasn't increased since 1994, and that if we don't start maintaining and repairing the roads now, we're going to have to replace them entirely, which will be more expensive.
Proposition 7 will allow the California State Legislature to establish a permanent year-round daylight savings time.
Time zones are established by the federal government, and daylight savings time was established by federal law. Legally, states are not allowed to adopt year-round daylight savings time, but they are allowed to opt out and remain on standard time all year.
So, if you vote yes for this proposition, that means that you would like to keep standard time all year long. But if you vote no, then you would like to continue having daylight savings every second Sunday of March and November.
Interestingly enough, both the Republican Party and the Democratic Party want you to vote yes on this proposition, but there are still arguments for and against. Democrat Kansen Chu and Democrat Lorena Gonzalez argue that heart attacks increase by 10% and strokes by 8% due to irregular sleeping patterns during daylight savings time. They also argue that it increases electricity use by 4%, which raises costs by $434 million every year. Some arguments against come from Democrat Hannah Beth Jackson and Republican Jim Nielsen. They argue that daylight savings time has been year-round once before during President Nixon's presidency, and there was an energy crisis, which turned into a disaster. They also argue that it would be terribly inconvenient for the sun to rise at 5 o'clock in the morning during the summer and 7:30 in the morning during the fall and winter. They also argue that daylight savings time in fact makes citizens safer, especially during the fall and winter, because of increased visibility for transportation.
Don't forget to vote on November 6th in the quad.
So basically in 1995, we previously had a rent control law which said that California cannot make new rent control laws for buildings built after 1995 or expand upon rent control laws that were currently in place at the time. Likewise, there were certain restrictions on renting in single room rentings in a family home. And what the Proposition 10 is going to do is it's going to repeal the 1995 Costa-Hawkins rental law in favor of allowing local governments to make their own rent control without having to use the restrictions placed on the entire state. People that are normally in favor of Proposition 10 are people who believe that using rent control can keep housing prices down and allows many Californians to have affordable housing for their lower income status. People who are against repealing the Costa-Hawkins 1995 law through Proposition 10 are generally property owners or people that believe by placing rent control on new buildings, we are going to disincentivize people from building new apartment complexes.
Proposition 12 establishes minimum space requirements for the sale of calf, raised for veal, breeding pigs, and egg-laying hens. So Proposition 2 from 2008 was deemed too vague, so this one is attempting to fix that. So it will establish minimum space requirements like 43 square feet per calf, 1 square foot per hen, and 24 square feet for breeding pigs. If a farmer violates this proposition, then it will be considered a misdemeanor and they'll be fined for up to $1,000.
Today I'll be telling you about Proposition 11. What is Proposition 11, you ask? Oh, good thing I'm here to tell you. So Proposition 11 would basically allow ambulance companies to tell ambulance workers that they have to stay on call during their breaks, meaning they get no time off. It's good that ambulance workers do not get a break because then they can save more lives. Save more lives, more people alive. Am I right? But people who oppose Proposition 11 think it's bad because, well, what they're worrying about is the mental health of the ambulance workers. So basically, vote yes or vote no.